Hello and welcome to another Transformers review. This one is not for a Hasbro Transformer. They are licensing out the Transformers to other brands, and ThreeZero is taking a crack at Transformers. So the reason I have Action Master Optimus Prime out is to give some history on non-transforming Transformers and how far we've come. In 1990, Action Masters were released, and even though there wasn't an internet at the time, most of the Transformers fans that I knew in my area thought, what the hey? And as the internet became a thing, I found out from a lot more fans online, they had the same feeling. What the hey, a Transformer that doesn't transform? And it certainly didn't help that Action Masters didn't even have the articulation and detail of an O-ring G.I. Joe. Sort of in the lower waist, but no waist twist, no elbow bend, no shoulder other than up and down. Didn't even have a ball jointed head. I've come to come to love Action Masters. I'm almost at love, I think. But they are definitely an acquired taste. But when you get 1,000 different Optimus Primes that do transform, sometimes variety is the spice of life. And courtesy of ThreeZero, there is a brand new Optimus Prime, which is currently available for pre-order at Big Bad Toy Store. And this is a 7-inch non-transforming Optimus Prime figure with lots of articulation, 48 points of articulation. But the thing that really makes this Optimus Prime, non-transforming Optimus Prime figure, a lot more special than many of the other ones is, here's a great little PVC Optimus Prime. The thing is, a lot of the non-transforming primes are plastic. And this ThreeZero Optimus Prime has die-cast parts, just like the beloved first Optimus Prime with his die-cast parts. So even though he doesn't transform into a truck, I think the metal aspect of this is a really big seller for especially G1 Transformers fans. And they're even doing non-transforming Optimus Primes in truck mode. So if you do have something like this Jada non-transforming Optimus Prime truck, then what I find is a really cool display option is sticking a non-transforming Prime in robot mode in front of a non-transforming Prime in truck mode. And that way you actually get all of the detail in each mode without having things like creases for the transformation. And it is an officially licensed Transformers product, licensed from Hasbro, released under the Transformers Generations line. So this is not third party. This is officially called Optimus Prime MDLX. Another look at the artwork on the back. And it comes in a really, really nice tray. Feels like a miniature Hot Toys figure. And you get a back tray of all of the different weapons. And just upon first glance, there's some nice metallic, very subtle. I'm digging the subtle. Talked about the nice subtle paint aspects in that recent Battlefield Warriors He-Man Battle Cat 2-pack. Same deal here. There's ever so slight metal scoring and wear. It's not too over the top. Gotta have the Matrix with Optimus Prime. That's a new interpretation of his axe. That's cool after seeing the original axe, about 24 times. It's nice to change it up a little bit. And there is Prime himself. Wow. Nice presentation here. Hot Toys has really hit home for me that it's not just about getting a great looking toy, but there's also something to be said about the presentation of opening up the package and how it's presented to you. How carefully and securely, but in addition to that, how kind of like almost a picture frame. If you get a really nice frame for a picture or a poster, even though, if you're going to open it up and play around with it and display it on the shelf, this will just go in the trash or in storage. But in terms of that first experience with the toy, I think it's really cool when it has a nice packaging picture frame to it. And guess what I got in my fist? I got a fistful of hands, fistful of fists. That's just off of the tray that was with Prime. And the second tray has even more hands, so tons of options. We'll go through each one of those. The big thing is, whenever you get a figure with lots and lots of hands, is how durable are those wrist pegs going to be? Because it's all for naught if you're breaking pegs doing the swapping. Comes with some instructions too, and they're Hasbro style. I love this. Always gives me a nice little dose of nostalgia, unfolding Transformers long style instructions like that. So not many instructions since he doesn't transform, but little tips like tips on the shoulder movement, arm movement, remove the chest plate in order to insert the matrix, leg articulation, foot articulation. Comes with a big old blaster. Prime's blaster has always been serious business, and this one looks like a little supersized. And this axe is really nice, clear orange plastic. It's almost like a Crystar toy. That's really, really nice. This looks like his back plate, and I'm thinking it just pops right into these slots on his back. Fill him out a bit. Probably not in there in the packaging in order to make him fit a little bit better, but looks like it just pops on and off quite easily. I mean, if you want him a little more live, you don't have to stick it on there, but if you want to bulk him up a little bit. And the Matrix of Leadership with a clear center to it. That's an important part of the Matrix. Sometimes they're just solid, and the wisdom of the ages is just painted in blue, but this one is actually translucent plastic in there. And instructions said that this should just come right off, so it doesn't open like some other Optimus Primes do. Just pop it right off, stick the Matrix in there, and this is always a big plus whenever there's an Optimus with a Matrix, that will grab it just ever so snugly, but not too snugly. I've seen sometimes where it's in there too much and you got to get a pair of tweezers or a little screwdriver to get it out. And this one just grabs it ever so slightly, but it comes out very, very easily, which means you're not going to have paint wear pulling it in and out. This is cool. The windshield is actually clear plastic. It's very, very dark, tinted very dark, but you can actually see through right there. And taking it off and putting it back on. Oh, it's actually magnetic. There's little magnets right there. Just trying to figure out where things plug in, but I'm a huge fan of magnets on toys. Don't ever have to worry about pegs breaking or posts. So when it comes to Transformers that don't transform and they're in robot mode, they better have really good posability, I think, for a lot of Transformers fans to be interested in them, because guys like this, I mean, he's got nostalgia on his side to forgive a lot of his shortcomings. This is a more recent Transformer that doesn't transform, Super 7 Blaster. And for me personally, it's the nostalgia of these guys that forgives a lot of the shortcomings of these guys. Unfortunately, these guys can be quite pricey. I didn't mention the price of this one. It actually comes in at quite a bit under $100. I was expecting easily 100 or more, so I'm surprised that it's not more than that. Considering it's Optimus, it's got die-cast metal, and has all these parts, all this articulation. So how about we futz around with his posability before we start swapping hands and putting guns in. This looks like a lot of the design elements have been seen before in other transforming Optimus Primes. So the leg can go forward if you turn these panels forward. If you don't, still goes pretty well, and it kind of just does it on its own actually. So it doesn't look like it's a piece you actually have to, see it kind of gets caught there. You got to be a little careful, but it's a little more forgiving than I thought it would be. And he's got incredible leg articulation. Really nice, tight joints here. Not ratcheting, but nice and tight, but not too tight, if you know what I mean. It doesn't feel, well, obviously you don't hear him squeaking and creaking, so it's not too tight, but it's tight enough that he's not going to flop. That is a super mega Spartan kick. That's kicking Scorponok right in the chops right there. That's really cool. And then easily forward. I don't know why this is always a thing I do, but I find it's a really good test for balance, for stability. If you need a stand or not. This guy definitely does not need a stand. Splits, you can, I don't know if you can do the splits. I don't know if, oh yeah, there's quite a bit of movement in this hip panel right here. So you, yeah, you can, Optimus, I never recall seeing him do the splits, but he can if you want. I want to point this out because this is really cool. So this part right here, this back part of his torso, look at how it can spin right up out of the way. So lots and lots of range here for once you get him in whatever pose you want to get him in. If you want to just, I mean, if you're really, really finicky and picky and enjoy the art of posing, that's a lot of freedom to move panels to wherever you want. And the knee has, this part moves in. That's cool. So it actually, wow, I have never seen that before. That is on a spring and it moves in when it hits this part of his leg. So sometimes I call it getting in the way of himself when a figure hits itself and that limits it. They put in this spring panel so that when he hits himself, he keeps going a little bit. It's ever so slight extra, but that's new. And how often can you say that? Not very often. These panels back here move too. So he does not get in his own way here. He is like the anti getting in his own way toy in terms of posability. These ever so slightly pivot too to get out of the way of the feet. And the feet do have, yeah, a side tilt to them. That's really important, especially for wide-legged poses. So he's got some really, really exceptional posability in his legs. Stability. Let's take a look at what the arms look like. Full 360. I mean, have you ever seen a toy that couldn't do a full 360? And this was in the instructions. This shoulder will actually pivot up like this to make room for the arm so that he doesn't get in his own way. And I mean, he's not a transformer, but that looks like a transforming joint right there. It could even be battle damage if you wanted to put a like a drooping hand, which I'm actually going to do right now that I thought about it. That was easy. Well, that answers the wrist swapping question. It's a tiny little ball joint, a little hole in the hands, and please don't break. This is a little on the tight side, but it's on there. And so if you wanted to have kind of like battle damage, got his arm ripped out of its socket or something like that, there you go. You can do that. And there's great elbow bend too. It's this little panel right here that moves. So many panels that are just moving out of the way. And if it feels like your articulation is limited, just wiggle and look how much more you can get. Since the hands are on a ball joint, they can actually pivot up and down, in and out. Tons of range there. How about the head? Kind of Yeah, he can do a full 360, but he kind of stops where he should stop. Like, I imagine that would be Optimus's full range. I think that's kind of a neat effect, where if you want to just turn it left and right, he shouldn't be able to move it more than that, but if for some reason you want him to do that, look over his own shoulder, you can. Up and down, little up, little down. Lots of little subtlety there. And waist twist, ab crunch. Lots and lots of articulation, and it's all sturdy too. Sometimes you get a figure with tons of articulation. There's a sticker on the package that says 40 points of articulation, but what good is it if the figure is floppy and it can't hold a pose? And this guy is holding all these poses very well, and he's got metal in him too. He's not that heavy. I thought he'd be a lot heavier with die-cast metal in him, and I'm not sure where it is. I can usually tell pretty quick what parts are die-cast because they're cool to the touch. Case in point, this guy right here, that's definitely die-cast right there. But this guy, I'm not sure what's die-cast on him. There's a little tiny bit of heft to him. It might have something to do with his legs, actually. I'm not entirely sure, but the problems of die-cast metal I don't think are going to be an issue with this guy, namely toppling over because of the weight of the die-cast metal. And let's load him up with some weapons, so many different hands, and luckily, nice and floppy plastic here. That's, if you're going to have bendy plastic on a toy, it should be for hands. And this is a pose I've done with very many Optimi over the years. Energy axe over the head and ion blaster pointed in front and blasting away. No problem whatsoever with his articulation. He can hold a fantastic pose, even just a quick thrown together one. He is sturdy, he's not falling over, he doesn't need a stand, he doesn't have peg holes. Doesn't need one anyway. And I think the real purpose of this figure, in addition to being a nice display piece, one thing I think that's I try to remember as a toy collector is to not just stick something on a shelf and leave it there for years and never touch it and be afraid to touch it. It's nice to futz with toys as an adult. May not be able to do those big battles anymore and zoom and whoosh and pew pew, but I find fun in the art of posing, and this guy is very, very interesting to pose around. Just the precision of it is what is really impressing me. Just ever so slight, move this a little bit, move that a little bit. It's like posing a movie maquette. Pointing pose is also a very important one to have for Optimus Prime. Interestingly enough, he doesn't have any just one finger pointing hands. This is a double finger, almost like an Obi-Wan Kenobi preparing to strike with his lightsaber pose. And it seems as though if he's got it on one hand, he's got it on the other if you want to switch things up. And thanks to all the range in the shoulders, if you wanted to put the double finger hands on both hands, you can have him do the Batusi. And I also noticed while I was trying to do that, I popped one of the arms out accidentally. I think I found the die cast. That looks like a die cast little ball joint right there. And that is a brilliant idea. I don't know how many plastic ball joint pegs I've broken. So peace of mind for the peaceful warrior. Optimus Prime right there. Don't have to worry about breaking pegs since they're die cast. I'm getting the feeling that this thing was designed by a true toy fan who has seen a lot of things done wrong or annoying in other versions of Optimus Prime and other toys in general, and has guarded against it, like the magnetic chest plate. Don't have to worry about breakage. The matrix gripping hands, sometimes this can be an issue with Transformers gripping matrices. Not being able to reach in and grab the handles of the matrix. Well, what they've done here is separate 2 of the fingers from the rest of them so that he can easily grip the matrix. And there he is, holding the matrix either in front of himself or the other popular pose option with the matrix is overhead. And that center gem looks especially nice when you've got some light passing through it. What's really impressing me is all the extra hands that they've gone with. So what I see a lot of the time with Optimus Prime or other figures that have swappable hands is that the right hand will be a trigger hand and then the left hand might be a weapon gripping hand, which is how I have them set up right here. But they've included the opposite if you want his left hand to be the firing hand and the right hand to be the gun steadying hand. I don't see that very often, so that's, I mean, I'll probably never use the inverse of these hands, but the fact that they've included it, maybe if someone's like Ned Flanders and they're a very proud lefty and they want their Optimus Prime to be a lefty as well, that's a really awesome extra bonus, and I think a little bit more useful than a build-a-figure part that you'll never build a figure with. I think this is especially cool too. Don't recall seeing this too often. Optimus Prime grabbing onto the clip to steady the ion blaster. Usually it's just a hand underneath the cannon steadying it, but this guy has so much range and articulation and so many different hand options that he can easily steady the blaster by holding the clip like he did in the movie. And let's close out with a couple of size comparisons, give you an idea of how much shelf space this guy's going to take up alongside the original G1 Optimus Prime. And already did this one earlier, an original Action Master, which is the same size as any other 3 3/4 figure, like this truck driver alongside this truck. Good old Jack Burton of the Pork Chop Express. Here he is with a Masterpiece Transformer, Masterpiece Hot Rod. That's pretty good. So this is Hot Rod, not Rodimus Prime. Rodimus is quite a bit bigger. That's about right. If you wanted to use this guy as Rodimus Prime instead of Hot Rod, then you could do kind of a cool back-to-back, since this Rodimus Prime also includes a matrix in his chest. He does not stand as well as this Optimus Prime. He's a little more floppy. And here's another Masterpiece Transformer. It's Grimlock, the original Masterpiece Grimlock. It's not bad. This Grimlock does not go with the current scale of Masterpiece Transformers, but that's actually really, really close, if not perfect, because Grimlock was quite a bit bigger than Optimus Prime on the cartoon. I remember Optimus having to look up at him a bit, which was freaky since Optimus was the biggest Autobot until the Dinobots were created and Skyfire came along, I guess. But yeah, if you've got nothing to do with this kind of outdated, obsolete sized Grimlock, they actually look really nice together because of all the extra detail in this Optimus Prime. Kind of looks like a movie version, live action movie version of what a G1 Optimus Prime should look like. And next to a G.I. Joe classified figure, 6-inch figure. So this Optimus is a 7-inch. He's going to be a little bit taller, but if you wanted them side by side, I guess even though they're not in scale, Optimus should be bigger than a G.I. Joe classified figure. Man, this guy's just a black shroud. You can never see any details on him because he's just a shadow. And finally, if you've got this is the smaller Jada Toys non-transforming Optimus Prime truck. They go fairly well together. This one is a lot more of a cherry, bright red, This one is more closer to what I remember the original Optimus Prime being colored. Kind of a bit of a duller gray. But for a Transformer that doesn't transform, it's kind of cool to display them alongside another Transformer that doesn't transform. You get maximum detail, and you don't get repetition. It's not two of the same guy side by side. And I guess if you're into it, you don't have to do any work. You don't ever have to transform them, because they don't. So that's a look at ThreeZero's MDLX Optimus Prime 7-inch figure. Don't let the non-transforming aspect of it discourage you from this. If you're into highly detailed, highly articulated, with sturdy articulation type figures, and you're a huge fan of Optimus Prime, and your bills are all paid for the month, then this is a pretty cool addition to any Transformers collection, I think. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, Nerdmas Day.